Hey everybody, it's Greg at TurboDork. Welcome to a live paint. I don't really know the term for this, but Alex thought it'd be cool if we recorded like the whole process of painting something. And we actually have a project that we need to complete here because we're going off to Gamma and Adepticon soon. So I have to switch camera views and it won't let me do it in this app. Interesting. Nope. Okay, I guess I'm cutting and then starting again. Okay, we're back. Now we're live again. Live, pre-recorded. Anyways, we've got golems that we bring to show off our paints at shows. And Docs has spent the last couple of weeks painting new sets of them. And I figured I should probably go back and check the old sets to see how they're doing. And this little guy didn't make it. Looks like Dark Ritual had a small accident. So we're going to fix him. And we're going to fix him with a pre-primed miniature. Pre-primed because we're testing some primers right now and I can't show you the prototype just yet. But soon. And a bottle of Dark Ritual. And this actually gives me a fun little thing to talk about, which is despite Dark Ritual actually looking like this when you paint it on a model. Let's see if I go out of the light. How does it look over here? Dark. Yeah, you see he's got purple to kind of yellow going. It does not look like that though in the bottle. It looks just like kind of white nothingness. And this is the case for something like 10 of our colors, which is that they are essentially like liquid prisms. So you don't really see much when it's over a white background. You have to put it over something black, i.e. black golem. And we mentioned that on the bottle, if it's going to focus. There we go. Must be used over a black base coat to see the shift effect. We're not lying about that. You really should use it over black, otherwise it's just going to look like nothing. So I'm going to show you right now what I mean. So we'll grab our bits. We'll head over to our airbrush station, which is kind of messy, but that's work life. Let me clamp this guy in here and hopefully not stop the thing from streaming. Well, not streaming, recording. Ow. Doing it live. Anyways, so how do we get started? We're going to airbrush this little dude. We're going to airbrush him with this. We need some of our thinning medium, helpfully placed here ahead of time. Parts for airbrush, airbrush compressor, airbrush booth. Actually, let me show you the airbrush booth a little bit. This is, I actually don't remember the brand for this airbrush booth. It's an American-made one. I like it because it has these removable filters. You're going to go through a lot of these filters if you airbrush a lot like we do. And having semi-clean filter media at least is quite helpful. But hopefully you guys can hear me over this extractor fan once I turn it on. But there are two things that are not shown here. And I'm not going to wear this mask right now, but you should get some sort of face mask to wear when you're airbrushing with at least P100 filters. You're going to ask me, Greg, it doesn't say that I need to do that on the bottle, and that's true. But anytime you're spraying anything, especially acrylic, you should think about having safety equipment on because you are aerosolizing liquid plastic. This is liquid plastic with colorant in it. Any other paint brand is liquid plastic with colorant in it. It's just what paint is. And once you aerosolize it, it floats around, it gets into your lungs, it gets on everything. I mean, you can see how dark this area is. It's because stuff's been floating around and spraying and landing there. So think about wearing that. I'm not going to wear it for the couple of minutes I'm spraying just so you guys can hear me. So I'm lightly sacrificing my lungs today. But we'll get gloved up real quick. I think you should also wear gloves. Paint's not going to do anything to your skin in the short term, but you also just don't need to paint your skin. So I know some people do. Sean loves testing paints on his skin. Actually, I'm going to take my watch off because I don't want to paint my watch. Okay. Woo. So we'll put our airbrush back together because I took it apart after I cleaned it last time. Somebody asked me on one of the videos that we did about why we use beeswax and why we had a little beeswax container up here. I use beeswax to go on the threads right here, right around here. Basically, you're trying to seal it against air. And let me grab this. Maybe I should talk about what airbrush we're using. We're using a Badger 105 today. We use a lot of Badgers at the office right now. We are also working on our own airbrush, but the reason we like Badgers is you could spray Elmer's glue through this thing and it would not care. So put the nozzle in, put the air cap on, tighten it up. You can actually see the wax is kind of squirting out here. So I'm just going to wipe that off. But yeah, sometimes if you're airbrushing a lot, you're going to get paint up in this thready bit, and then air is going to come out there instead of coming out there where you want it to. We will put our needle in, put it there, tighten it, and make sure you can see it. Yep, perfect. Okay, so we're going to turn our compressor on. We're going to turn our airbrush booth on. We are running a 0.5 needle nozzle, which is the standard for the Badger 105. If you have a 0.3, that will work just fine. You will need to thin a little bit more. We are running our compressor at 30 psi, which I know is also a little more than most people recommend. But it just helps give it a little more oomph to get the big pigment through the paintbrush. If you have never airbrushed before, it is actually surprisingly simple. Most of the hard part about airbrushing is cleaning it. As you can tell, I didn't clean this guy very well, but he's still working. And thanks to the little compressor, making himself known. We will start off with, actually, we're going to put this down. We're going to start off with mixing up our paint. Now, you can shake the heck out of this. It has a little glass ball in here, which you can hear. But the other thing you can do is cheat a little bit. And you can, nice new bottle, crack that seal open. If you look, let's see if I can, let me turn off the compressor because he's just going to keep complaining while I do this. Right here is a tiny little notch right at the tip. You can get in there with a screwdriver or your thumbnail. I'm not going to use my thumbnail because I always rip my gloves when I do that. But you can just pop that tip off, and then you can use one of our special mixing sticks. You can also use the back of a paintbrush. But I like the mixing stick because you can get... Ooh, can I get a good shot of this? Probably not. I'm going to spill this all over myself while I'm trying to mix, because that's me. You can kind of see it moving there on the left. Basically, having silicone is nice because you can really wipe the bottom of the bottle. Oh yeah, there you can see it showing up. Basically, you just do this for like 10 seconds. Maybe a little longer. This bottle's been sitting for a bit. But instead of shaking for a couple minutes and giving myself tennis elbow, which I am now suffering from, you can do this. You just give a little swirl. And again, I'm gonna pour this on myself trying to show you the bottom of this, but you want to get all the pigment off of this bottle and you want to get it all onto your model. I'm workshopping that phrase. Probably needs a better delivery, but I think it works. But yeah, if you see pigment on the bottle, especially if it's like a color like Scarab, which are like hyper concentrated, if it looks cool on the bottom of the bottle, you want to get all that pigment mixed back up. You want it in suspension with the paint itself. And I'm just going to wipe this off a little bit. Normally I would just leave this to dry, but I'm going to go wash this off real quick because I might need it again real quick. Quick. And I'm working next to a sink. If you don't have a sink right near where you spray, a little bucket of water is nice to have. I know some people have like big bowls that they wash their stuff in. I just wipe it off in the sink. All right, and let me go grab a paper towel. This is making for fascinating viewing, I'm sure. Yeah, I'll dry off our hands just so I don't get water all over the place. But paper towels are nice to have around. All right, put our tip back on. Close it. I'm just going to shake it a little bit more for good luck, because I don't know, I've done this for 8 years and I feel like I should always do a little bit. There we go. Now you can see, nice and homogenized. There's no rim of pigment down here where my thumb is at. All right. Now, I am just going to squirt some into our airbrush. Now, I am painting a full miniature, and I'm going to try to do 2.5 coats. So I'm putting a lot of paint in, and then thinner. Just gonna be hard to see on a white paint, but I'm just eyeballing it. There is instructions on the side if you want to be precise, but I usually kind of just do it by feel. Okay, mixing stick again, and mix it up. You want to make sure you get, let's get close to the camera, see if it focuses. You want to make sure you get nice and deep in the cup. The airbrush has the needle going through the bottom of the cup, and sometimes unmixed paint will stick around that. So you want to make sure you get everything well incorporated. I know some people talk about putting thinning medium down there first. That would actually probably be a good idea. I just always forget to. So I do it this way. Is it the correct way? No. It's just the one that works for me, which is actually a lot of airbrushing. I'm going to show you how to airbrush. There's going to be 5 other videos by other people on how to airbrush. Everyone has their own thing. It works for them, and that is great. And you will find your thing. All right, let's move this so that we can kind of see the mini a bit better, and we can turn on our compressor and our airbrush booth, and hopefully you can hear me over this. Pretty loud. But here we go. We've got airbrush, 0.5 needle nozzle, thinned out paint, 30 psi. We're gonna just test it on my hand real quick. So see, you're getting that purple color. This is white. You're getting color here on the black surface of my glove. So that's the part where you just gotta trust the process and you gotta use it. Now, one thing to think about, and we'll get to this after our first coat, I'm using a dual action airbrush, which means when I push down, straight down, see if I can do this without pouring the paint, I just get air, which is great for drying things. When I push down and I pull back, you're gonna see on my glove, over there, yep. Now I'm getting paint as well. So that's the dual action part. That lets you control essentially how much air and how much paint flow you have. I don't use this a lot of the time when I'm doing the painting, but I do use it for drying the paint in between coats, and you'll see what I mean soon. So I'm just drying this on my gloves so you can kind of see what it looks like. Okay, so we'll start with our mini. I've painted a couple hundred of these golems now at this point, so I've got a pretty decent little system in place, but usually I'm going to try to paint kind of the underneath of the arms, around the back, bottom of the base, and then I go up around for the top. I personally tend to try to paint the things that are the hardest to reach first, and then I go for the easy stuff. I like having the reward at the end for bearing with the hard stuff. So I'm going to press down, and I'm going to pull back, and hopefully you can see this. Yeah, that's showing up. So I'm painting his armpits. And I'm painting the like little bits around his hands, kind of between his fingers, his little fingies. Yep, that's good. You can see my airbrush is not clean because I'm getting a little bit of blowback. But it'll still work, at least for this. I'm not doing anything particularly detailed today. So now I'm going around the rim of the base. What I'm looking for is, this guy's got these like crystals kind of around his base. I'm trying to get under those. Will most people see that? Probably not. But so I'm just pushing down and I'm pulling back. Distance is a little weird. I've got a camera in front of me. Normally I would not be filming this, but essentially you want to cover a decent area. You don't want to get too close because then you'll get pooling. You don't want to go too far because then it's going to dry as you're spraying and then you get kind of a weird texture. It takes a little bit of experimenting. And you know, I'm trying to do this through a camera, which is really weird and mess with my perspective. So I feel like I'm doing a decent job. I feel like I got most of the bottom of him good, but now when you look at the top, it's not painted. And I just kind of paint while I spin. There we go. Yeah, got that little clog out. I kind of do like a 360. I do like a 360 from a lower 45, a 360 at 90, an upper 45, and then just like a little bit from the top. That's if I'm trying to paint the whole dude, which I am. If you're painting a smaller surface, you probably don't need to do that. If you feel like you're getting a little bit of a clog, sometimes it'll build up on the needle and you can just kind of pinch it. Now the other question this brings to mind, or an answer to a question this brings to mind, is what do I consider a coat? You know, we say 2 to 3 coats on the side of the bottle. What is a coat? Now, I don't know if you can tell, he looks kind of wet. I'm trying to get enough paint that his entire surface is wet out a little bit. If you go past that wet point where he's like dripping paint, you're going to have paint runs or weird pooling. You can go below that point, and that's generally fine, except for you need more coats. So a lot of people will be like, Greg, you've already sprayed his entire surface, and that's true. But I kind of went with like a light first one. So now I'm going back with like a little more of a, I don't know, solid, bring everything up to a decent saturation level. And then we'll dry him all at once. So yeah, I think that's a decent first coat. I've gotten all of the surfaces. I don't see any black showing. But you can see this was white. Not white anymore on him. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to dry the miniature really quick. This is one of those other fun things in our little tips and tricks video. I keep a 1 minute, what do you call it, sand timer, old school timer. There's a term for these things. Anyways, you can tell it's covered in paint. Anyways, flip it over. Gives us a minute. I'm going to use the airbrush air only by pushing down. Actually, I want that full minute. I'm going to go back to that. Yeah. Hourglass. Thank you, Alex. That is the term for that thing. You could also just put the timer on your phone, but since I get paint everywhere, this way. Yeah, so we're just going to press down and we're just going to get air. It's the lovely part of the dual action airbrush. And we're going to use that air to dry our miniature. We're going to use a minute. And I'm just going to do this. And I'm not spraying any paint. I am just spraying air. And I'm just spinning them around, giving it a little blow dry. Literally. Reason I'm doing this is you can dry them for like a minute or two. And then you can come back and do your second coat essentially immediately while the paint's still a little tacky. If you're painting a lot of miniatures, like a squad, you probably don't need to do this. You could just put one guy down and move on to the next, and by the time you get to the 5th guy or 10th guy, you know, 10 minutes has passed and you can come back. But when we're painting these golems, we're trying to paint like a lot, like 10 or 20 in a session of, you know, one particular color. So we're just trying to hammer through it. And this is the best way we found to do that. Again, so I'm just finger down on the trigger, not pulling back, just spraying air. Getting a lovely 360 of this guy as I rotate him and air dry him. And it looks like my timer's done. And you'll be able to see, if it focuses on him, he doesn't look really wet anymore. The surface is matted out a little bit, and that shows that it is dried enough to kind of receive this second coat without dripping. So we'll put our timer away, hourglass away. I always test to make sure I can still spray. Yep. Whoop. Really hosing it on there. But now I know it works. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do a lower 45, a 90, an upper 45, and then a little from the top. And honestly, for this color, we're gonna be fine after those two coats. So I'm just pushing down, pulling back. I can physically see the spray hitting the miniature. And I'm just going around for his lower 45, his like armpit sections, under the hands, kind of stuff that you would normally miss. You know, if you're trying to just paint a miniature like that on the table, you're not going to be getting those lower bits properly. It's pretty good. Now we're going to go for our like middle 90. And I'm always moving the airbrush around. I'm kind of moving like a circular motion. One of the things that'll kill you is if you put too much paint in one spot and it pools, you're gonna get a weird effect. So I'm trying to like always be moving the paint around on the surface. Yeah, that feels pretty good. We're gonna go for our, I'm actually gonna go try to get underneath in his like leg bit area. Same thing for the back. That's just a particular trouble area on this guy that I need to make sure I get more paint into. And then I'm gonna try to get like the, you know, upper arm bits. And then because I know these minis are gonna be mostly seen from the front, I'm just gonna go a little heavier on the front just to make sure that's wet out. A little more under his back of his head. Yeah, there we go. So, white, colorful on the model. It's actually going to look a little lighter here because we went heavy. Once it dries, it's going to be a little darker. It's kind of a function of acrylic paints. They look white in the bottle, even, well, regular acrylics look white no matter what, because it's part of the acrylic process. And then when it dries clear, so things look darker because that white goes away. But yeah, maybe I went a little heavy on the front. It's fine. No, that's essentially it. Let me turn off the fan so you can hear me. So I'll put our airbrush away for a second. Yeah, there we go. New guy. We're gonna just put him aside. We'll let him dry. Oh, complaining air compressor again. We'll let him dry essentially for 24 hours minimum, probably for 2 days, and then we'll take him off and glue him to his base. But you really want to let acrylics like fully cure, especially if you go heavy. And doing that kind of drying process in the middle lets you go heavy. The reason being is essentially acrylic paints are an emulsion of acrylic polymers and water. You need that water to evaporate out. It takes a while for it to evaporate out, especially when you go heavy. And it's not fully cured until it's those acrylic polymers have coalesced when the water has evaporated. So let it sit for 24 to 48 hours before you do anything with him. Could you go quicker? Yes, but why? Let him get nice and hard. That's not something I should have said on YouTube. But yeah, so we'll put him away and I'll show you how to clean the airbrush real quick. So we're done painting, now we're cleaning. Cleaning is very easy. You're gonna dump the paint out You're going to run some water through the airbrush, and then you're going to take the needle out and all that kind of stuff and just let it dry. And I'm going to try to move this camera over so we can show our sink. And that whole process. Let's see. You can see I wasn't lying when I said we had a camera right behind us, or a sink right behind us. Oh, come on. Haha. Okay. So, quickie paint. How to clean an airbrush really quick. Nope, that's not at all centered. There we go. I'm just gonna run air through, or run water through. Let me go turn my compressor back on so I can do some blowing. So, just wash out what's ever in the cup. If your compressor is on, you can run some water through. You can also make sure not to stab yourself, but you can do a little blowback thing, which is when you do this, you can put your finger on here, and you can bubble air back through the needle and nozzle and up into the cup. That's a really good way to clean things really quick. However, don't let it go forward, otherwise you're going to stab this needle into your finger. Take this out. Basically run my fingers from the back up to the tip so I'm not stabbing myself. Just trying to get any kind of paint off of here. So that's the needle. Well, when the needle's gone, we'll do the same blowback technique. Run a whole bunch of water through, and then we'll take this off. Same thing. It's all about, as my friend Richard used to say, the solution to pollution is dilution. Look at that dirty airbrush. If you're having troubles with the airbrush, it's probably because it's dirty. Mine included. Okay, that's the airbrush itself done. Now I'm going to grab this little tool. You can get these, let's turn that off for a sec. You can get these with little brush sets for like less than $10. It's a tiny sharpened little point with a flat on it, so you can kind of scrape with it as you turn. But usually what I'll do is I'll take the needle, or the nozzle cap, the air cap, and I'll just give it a little run through up here. Same thing from this side. I'm not really putting any pressure on it. I'm just trying to make sure there's no paint stuck in here. There's definitely paint stuck on the outside, but that doesn't matter a whole lot. And then one of the nice things about those badgers is the nozzle is compression fit into there. I'm going to try to get this to focus. So there's our nozzle. I'm going to hold it onto this, and again, whoops. I'm just going to spin it. I'm not really applying any pressure. And this will just help clear out any kind of mica that's currently in the nozzle. And then I'll do a little like circular motion, pulling it away. Clean that off. And then take the nozzle just with a little bit of water. And then you're done. And that's airbrushing 101. Fully from start to finish in 30 minutes. So yeah, thanks for watching. We'll do more of these. And actually let me ooh, outro, right? Yeah, thanks for watching. We're gonna do more of these. Alex is laughing at me, as they should.
I can see the camera, right?
Yeah, am I in it?
You're in it, but when you first did it,
Oh, I was like, oh yeah. It's interesting being on this side of the camera. I was a photographer for 15 years, so this is different for me. But yeah, so that's the whole process of painting one of our swatch golems. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Yeah, Turbodork out.